Welcome back to Today Assessed's Report, your go-to source for the latest crypto insights, market movements, and future-focused analysis. Today's topic is one that's been turning heads across the XRP community and beyond. We're talking about a bold $18,000 XRP valuation model that's not built on hype, not driven by speculation, but grounded in something much more serious: actual math and real-world liquidity data. And when I first came across this, I'll be honest, my instinct was to scroll right past it. But something felt different. This wasn't just another wild prediction floating around social media. This was structured, traceable, and built on logic that forces you to think differently about XRP's future. So today we're breaking it all down in a way that's clear, engaging, and worth your attention, because when you connect all the dots, this story starts to look a lot bigger than just a price target. Now here's the key thing you need to understand right from the start. This model is not predicting that XRP will hit $18,000. That's important. What it's doing instead is showing what XRP's price would mathematically need to be if it were handling certain levels of global transaction volume. That's a completely different conversation. It shifts the focus away from guessing price and puts it directly onto usage, adoption, and real-world demand. And honestly, that's where things start to get interesting. Because instead of asking, will XRP reach this price? The better question becomes, what role does XRP need to play in the financial system for that price to even make sense? And once you start thinking that way, everything changes. Your perspective, your expectations, and how you interpret every new piece of news that comes out. So let's talk about the structure of this model, because this is where it really starts to stand out. The framework is built using live liquidity metrics pulled directly from the XRP ledger. Not guesses, not assumptions, actual on-chain data feeding into different scenarios. And those scenarios are broken down based on specific use cases, each tied to a certain level of transaction volume, also known as ticket size. You've got multiple layers here, ranging from small-scale remittance flows all the way up to full global financial integration. And each level has a corresponding price requirement based on how much liquidity XRP would need to facilitate those transactions efficiently. That's what gives this model its weight. It's not emotional, it's mechanical. It's showing you how the system behaves under pressure. At the lower end of the spectrum, we're looking at small to medium enterprise payments and remittance corridors. These are the types of flows that are already happening today through Ripple's on-demand liquidity services. In this scenario, the model suggests that XRP would need to sit somewhere around the double-digit range, roughly in the teens, to support peak transaction volumes of around $100 million. And here's the fascinating part. This is the only scenario that's already showing signs of validation in the current market. We're seeing real activity, real usage, and real infrastructure being built in this space. It's early, no question about it, but it's not theoretical anymore. It's happening right now, and that gives this entire model a foundation to stand on. As we move up into the mid-tier scenarios, things start to scale quickly. Now we're talking about corporate treasury flows and regional banking activity. This is where institutions begin to step in, and the numbers start to reflect that. The model places XRP somewhere between roughly $100 and $700 in this range, depending on the volume and velocity of transactions. That's a massive jump, and it highlights just how sensitive price becomes when adoption increases. But again, this isn't saying XRP will go there tomorrow. It's saying that if institutions begin using XRP at scale for cross-border liquidity, then mathematically, the price would need to adjust to support that level of demand. And that's a powerful way to look at it because it ties price directly to function. Now let's push this even further into the high-end scenarios, where things start to look almost unbelievable at first glance. This is where XRP becomes a dominant global bridge asset, operating 24/7 across borders, connecting financial systems worldwide. In this scenario, the model suggests that XRP would need to handle transaction tickets in the tens of billions, even reaching up to $50 billion per transaction flow. And that's where the $18,000 figure comes from. Not as a guess, but as a requirement, a mathematical necessity if XRP were to operate at that level. And yes, that requires a massive increase from where we are today. We're talking about a multiple in the thousands. But again, it's not a prediction. It's a conditional outcome based on usage. So the real takeaway here is this: your belief in XRP's future price is directly tied to your belief in its future role. If you think XRP stays limited to niche use cases, then the lower scenarios make more sense. But if you believe XRP becomes a core piece of global financial infrastructure, then suddenly those higher numbers don't look as crazy as they once did. It reframes the entire conversation. It moves us away from speculation and into strategy. And that's where serious discussions begin. Now let's shift gears and talk about something equally important: real-world signals from the financial industry. Because while models are useful, they need to be supported by actual movement in the market. And that's exactly what we're starting to see. A major fintech executive recently made a statement that distributed ledger technology is once again gaining momentum. And this isn't coming from a crypto influencer or a retail investor. This is coming from someone deeply embedded in the infrastructure of global finance. That matters. When the people building the system start talking like this, it's worth paying attention. What makes this even more interesting is the timing, because this isn't just talk and it's backed by integration. The same fintech platform is already connected with Ripple's technology stack, enabling interoperability between traditional systems like Swift and newer blockchain-based solutions. And this is where things start to click, because now we're not just talking about XRP in isolation. We're talking about XRP being plugged into the existing financial network, working alongside the systems that banks already use every single day. And the scale of this integration is massive. We're talking about connectivity with thousands of financial institutions, major payment rails, and high-volume transaction systems capable of processing up to 1 million transactions per hour. This is not experimental technology. This is infrastructure grade, built for speed, efficiency, and real-world application. And one of the biggest advantages here is the ability to settle transactions in seconds instead of days. That's a game changer, especially in a world where time equals money. Another key piece of this puzzle is cost reduction. Traditional correspondent banking systems are expensive, especially in emerging markets. And that's exactly where XRP-based solutions have the strongest use case. Lower fees, faster settlement, and improved transparency. These are not just nice features, they're necessary improvements. And when financial institutions start looking for better solutions, this is where XRP enters the conversation in a very real way. Now, when you connect all of this back to the price model, something interesting happens. The near-term scenarios align with current usage. The mid-tier scenarios align with growing institutional interest. And the high-end scenarios align with full-scale infrastructure integration. It's not random. It's layered. Each piece supports the next. And while we're still in the early stages, the direction is becoming clearer. At the same time, it's important to stay grounded. None of this guarantees a specific outcome. Adoption takes time. Infrastructure builds slowly. And the financial world doesn't change overnight. But what we're seeing right now are the early signs of something much bigger. The foundation is being laid, the connections are being built, and the conversation is shifting from if to how. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a framework, a way to think about XRP that goes beyond price charts and short-term speculation. It gives us a lens to evaluate progress, to understand developments, and to make more informed decisions. And in a space that moves as fast as crypto, that kind of clarity is valuable. As always, none of this is financial advice. It's analysis based on publicly available information and observable trends. The market will do what it does, and it's up to each individual to do their own research and make their own decisions. But one thing is clear, the conversation around XRP is evolving. And if these trends continue, we could be looking at a very different landscape in the years ahead. Stay sharp, stay curious, and keep watching the signals. Better times may be ahead. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Today Assessed Report, and I'll see you in the next one.